Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm Ukrainian Canadian. Today is June 22nd, 2022. Now let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? So, today, again, I want to talk about Zaporizhia. And today, the good thing is that some pro Russian sources are now confirming that the Ukrainians are breaking through the trenches close to Robotyne. And essentially, this means that the Ukrainians have found a weak spot and they're pushing the Russians out of that settlement, which is very meaningful because this area is one of the most heavily defended areas. This is why Ukraine has been having a difficult time for the last 2, 3 weeks to break through here because, of course, Russia understands the implications of losing this settlement and also the following settlements after Robotyne. So it's very, very, very positive news. And the importance of Robotyne is also should be stated here is that the Ukrainians are most likely, if we're looking at the map, they're trying to follow also the highways that are leading towards Polohe. And as you can see, this is the TO803 highway, I believe. And there's one also smaller road that is the TO815 highway that is a little bit above of the main highway here. The TO803 highway leads into Mariupol. As you can see, it's a very long road, so it's not a given direct road towards Mariupol. But I think the Ukrainians will probably try to follow this road or close to this road to continue liberating the villages and settlements, at least for now, close to Polohe. And this is also pincer movement. If the Ukrainians, and I think when the Ukrainians are going to be able to break through here, they're going to start pushing, I think, and doing a pincer movement. So pushing from above in the north and also from the west. And so this is a pincer movement. And if we've seen the Ukrainian tactics in the past, that's been the bread and butter of the Ukrainian armies, is pushing along different fronts and creating these pincer movements on the Russian soldiers and the Russian defenses. So I think this is one of the strategies here, is pushing towards Robotyne, but also following, pushing on the side and really putting a lot of pressure on the Russian defenses. So eventually the forces that are currently defending here, Dorozhyanke, all the way up to higher up towards Velikonovosilka, around here, they're going to start feeling it. And I think this is really going to impact their decision making. Do they stay here, continue defending, or the Ukrainians, as you can see, continue pushing here, and they're in deep trouble as the Ukrainians continue liberating areas here, and that's going to be for the next couple of weeks. I think this is what one of the main goals is for the Ukrainian forces, to follow kind of the road here, or the roads along the main highway here, and continue liberating the villages and settlements around the area of Robotyne and Polohe. So overall, this is very positive. Again, there's haven't been that many other updates. The only other update is also around the area of Donetsk, where the Ukrainian forces have started one small little offensive as well around Marinka, so a suburb of Donetsk. This suburb has been completely annihilated by the Russians, but it's been holding strong since 2014. This is one of the most heavily defended areas as well. So the Ukrainians are also trying to go on the offensive here. And there's been reports that they've had, as you can see here, again, Deep State updated a small little area under Ukraine control. I think it's going to be difficult here because of how densely populated the Donetsk area, greater Donetsk area, is. A very dense population. So it's not going to be an easy fight here. Again, it's probably a distraction, probably finding an opportunity where perhaps around here there is less defenses, and perhaps the Ukrainians are trying to find an opening as well. Because obviously Donetsk is the capital of Donbass for the Russians, right? Losing Donetsk would be, well, pretty much a catastrophe. And I seriously doubt it's going to happen soon, but it is a huge, huge, important and symbolic city to capture. And eventually, I have no doubt that the Ukrainians will be able to capture Donetsk, but I don't think it lies in the primary objectives of the Ukrainian armed forces right now. But it's also to destabilize anywhere they can. So overall, that's what's going on. There haven't been any other massive news on the front line, so I'll keep you guys updated as things develop. Now, let's go into Crimea. And between Crimea and Kherson, there's a lot of bridges, right? Because Crimea is a peninsula. And so today, the Ukrainian armed forces, again, it's not been confirmed, but one of the bridges that is in Chongar, so it links Crimea to Kherson, has been hit by the Ukrainian forces. So I believe Chongar is somewhere around here, as you can see. Yeah, it's right above like the bridge here. So Chongar is here, and the bridge was hit here exactly. And there's a video that came out of a missile striking this bridge, which is a supremely vital link for the Russians. This is a lifeline for the Russian armed forces in the south here. If they lose Chongar, and actually I'm very surprised it wasn't hit before. I think this was one of the most strategic bridges to hit, but I think it was also the capacity of the Ukrainian armed forces wasn't there to hit so deep, with missiles, because it's surrounded by so much land that you would not have been able to carry out a boat strike here, a boat, unmanned surface, sea vessel here, or something else like a truck. It would be too difficult. So now that Ukraine has the long-range missiles, aka Storm Shadows, which seems to be the culprit for this attack, or the missile used for this attack, now I think that the Ukrainians can continue striking. This is a vital link. You can see that this is one of the very few bridges that link up Crimea to Kherson and Zaporizhia, right? The main road that leads into Melitopol. There's another one, but this one would be a massive detour for the Russians as well. It's not a bridge, but it's more of a sort of like a land type of connection. So for the Russians right now, they would have to detour instead of having a much more clearer path towards Melitopol, as you can see here. Now, because this bridge is damaged, is most likely not functional, and I'm guessing that the Ukrainian forces will be hitting it in the foreseeable future again. Now the Russians need to do a detour from Jankoe and go left and do massive detour to get to Melitopol. As you can see, they can take probably some smaller roads in the south of Kherson here. But this is a huge loss for the Russians, and I hope the Ukrainian forces will continue striking this bridge and also making life miserable on the left side here. But that's a great tactic, and I'm not surprised, right? Rakove a few days ago was hit. A massive stockpile of weapons and ammunition was hit here. Massive explosions, and satellite imagery also confirmed, the detonation and the massive destruction of, I think, a warehouse or storage facility around the city of Rakove. So the Ukrainians are following the tactic of hitting the supply lines and vital infrastructure for the Russian military to make their life miserable. And I think it's also preparation for something much bigger in the following weeks. They're hitting it because they know that they will be doing a massive attack. And if the Russians don't have the right supplies coming through or consistent supplies coming through, they're going to be deep trouble here, and they're going to start breaking down very quickly. I have no doubt about it. So it's a preparation for something much bigger. And that's why this was part of my second, presentation here. You can see the images of the strike. It's nothing massive. It's a massive hole, but it's not like it destroyed the bridge completely. So I think that a couple more strikes and it will render this structure completely useless. And again, Russia doesn't have time to build bridges, right? It's going to take months. And pontoon bridges, well, that's not really reliable because they can be hit at any time, and they're not going to be lasting for very long. So I think that Ukraine now, this is going to be the new Antonovsky Bridge, right? The Ukrainians are probably going to start striking this bridge very, very often, in my opinion. The Antonovsky Bridge was the one that linked Kherson to the other side of the Dnipro River, the left bank to the right bank. So I think this is going to be the same sort of target now for the Ukrainians. So now it's the Chongar Bridge, which we'll see being hit on a constant basis. Also, one thing that I'm just telling myself, what if? I just cannot understand why this bridge was not blown up at the beginning of the conflict. And for sure, this has to do with traders and some traders that said that, it wasn't necessary to do it. If in February, the Ukrainian forces, or the very few forces that were here in the beginning of the conflict, blew up this bridge, this would have made life miserable for the Russians, right? It would have extended the ability of the Ukrainian armed forces to defend the south by several days, right? And that could have meant, even a few extra days could have meant more defenses in Mariupol, more defenses in Berdyansk, more defenses in Kherson, right? And instead, the Russians just rolled through, just like they rolled through butter, without any, without anyone defending in this area. And that to me is just a mystery as to what happened here, right? In the beginning of this full-scale invasion by Russia. This bridge should have been blown up from the very beginning. As soon as the Russian military started crossing, there should have been a grouping of Ukrainian soldiers that should have detonated this bridge. It was a no-brainer that Russia would have attacked from there, right? All the signs were showing that they were amassing a large grouping of forces in Crimea as well. Anyways, it's useless now to say what if that happened, but that would have saved millions of lives, right? Not in the sense that the people living in the south, in Zaporizhia and Kherson, would not have to bear with this, the atrocities that the Russians are currently doing in Zaporizhia, in Mariupol, and Kherson. But it's just sad to think about it. Now, Pregosian came out with, he's again blowing up about the realistic situation on the front lines. Part of his discontent is, of course, the fact that he lost this battle against Shoigu. And it's clear that Putin is backing Shoigu against this sort of internal conflict between Pregosian and the Russian MOD. And so I think that, Pregosian has nothing really to lose, and he's trying to destabilize Putin's clique, and perhaps even tries to destabilize Putin's ability to control the situation by literally rebuting what he's saying, that everything is under control, everything's fine, where everything's going according to plan. And then you have Pregosian making statements live and really basically saying that everything is going terribly for the Russian army. So let's hear what he has to say. I cannot in any way comment how the counteroffensive of the armed forces of Ukraine is going. I can say what is happening. Oops, sorry about that. On the line of contact. Piatekhatke is under the Ukrainian control. The northern part of Robotine is under the enemy. Orozhaine is under the enemy. And that shows that huge parts were given to the enemy. Then, over Tokmak in Sadove village, here there is the enemy, and pray to God it's some solitary group of 50 to 100 people. But there isn't any kind of control, no weapons, no ammunition. The soldiers spend whole days writing letters that they need ammunition. They need shells, anti-tank mines. They need grenades and armor-piercing cartridges. So the world has once more divided into two realities. In one place, in secret from everyone, so no one would know, no military correspondent would get there. All information is shut down, and the enemy is advancing towards Molotchi Liman. If he reaches Molotchny Liman, then the majority of the territory seized during the so-called special military operation will be returned to the enemy. The enemy is starting to force through the Dnipro River, the whole Apristan, saboteur reconnaissance groups appearing first and starting today, regular troops as well. All this is completely hidden from everyone. Russia will wake up one day and find out that Crimea has already been passed to the Ukrainians. Direct treachery of the interests of Russian Federation is in progress. And all this goes with massive losses in the background. The troops need to be replenished. A soldier cannot fight alone. He cannot fight when a unit lacks 50 to 60% of its people. Anyways, you get the point. He's complaining that realistically Russia is definitely at the losing end. And the problem with Putin's Russia is that they're trying to pretend that they're up to the level of the West, if not even better, right? We have a better army. We have a better economy. We have a better society with better values, right? The problem is that Russia in reality has no capacity to match the West, as the West is just simply too strong. And Russia, thankfully, just solidified the bond that the Western allies believed they lost, right? Before the war, it seemed to be very divided. And I think Putin made a very big bet, and rightfully so, right? that Europe was divided would not help Ukraine, that the United States will probably just sit it out or try to do minimal efforts. And to be honest, in the beginning, if it wasn't for Zelensky saying, I need ammunition, and not a ride, but ammunition, and he would have taken that ticket out of Ukraine, it would have been game over, right? And so his bets was a massive gamble, but it paid off at the end for the West because it only solidified the West together. And the reality is that the Russians just simply can't accept the fact that they can't compete with the West at all. You know, I've told you guys, what can you tell me one thing in the last 30 years in modern Russia of an innovative thing that they've created that the whole world is reliant on, apart from raw resources like oil, gas, minerals? There's nothing. Russia doesn't provide any value in terms of innovation, pushing global peace and stability. If anything, they're pushing global instability. And I'm telling you why in the next presentation, the next slide. And this is the very important topic I want to talk about. Following Nova Kakhovka, now it's not out of the books that Russia will go ahead with this. God forbid again, I'm really, really praying I'm wrong here. I'm really praying that I'm not going to be correct on this one. But we need to be realistic as well. And the reality is, it seems like the more days go by, and Putin has less to lose, right? Scorched earth tactics. He doesn't care in reality about the ecology, the people, the soldiers, even his own soldiers in his own army. He doesn't care about the numbers. He wants to make a point that he can do whatever he wants, right? And he is a man that has nothing to lose. And that's why he blew up the Nova Kakhovka dam. And so knowing what they did last month, or early this month, I should say, with the dam, I think we should not be writing off the fact that the Russians would and probably will blow up the nuclear power plant. It's about 50-50 at this point. And so Zelensky today said, or yesterday said, that Russia's considering a terrorist act at Zaporizhia plant. And he says that intelligence agencies have received information that shows Russia is considering carrying out a terrorist attack at the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, mining even the cooling system. This time, it should not be like the Kakhovka situation. The world has been warned. Therefore, the world can and must act, right? Zelensky has talked about it to all the global leaders, the African leaders that came over. I wouldn't be surprised if he mentioned that to them. The United States, Europe, the EU, and any other country, right? This is not just some local problem, right? If this happens, this is going to impact, at the very least, the European continent. And as I've said previously, you're not just going to be able to take an umbrella and shelter yourself from the radiation, right? This is going to impact everybody in Europe at the very least. And this will concern the entire stability of the world. And so how the world will react to it is going to be very important. And unfortunately, the reaction after the Nova Kakhovka dam blew up was terrible. There was pretty much no reaction. Everybody, I'm generalizing here, but it seemed to be like nobody knew how to react, right? They didn't want to really point fingers at Russia. And it seemed like Putin got away yet again with murder. Yet again with a terrorist act, and nobody really punished Russia. There was no direct response, right? In terms of, okay, now we're giving everything to Ukraine. We're sending 1,000 Abrams right now. Again, I'm exaggerating, but you get my point, right? Really making a statement that we're going to offer unconditional support, and whatever Ukraine is asking for, we're going to give it to them. Instead, we're going to give maybe 15 Bradleys, 10 Strikers. Like, it's great help, but Ukraine needs hundreds of them, hundreds of tanks, and dozens of F-16s right now. But the big controversial, statement that I'm going to make is, if Russia goes ahead with this, not only NATO should get directly involved in securing, the first objective would be to secure Enerhodar, to make sure that the Russians do not control this area anymore, and then there can be very swift actions to take control over the power plant and secure it. But Ukraine should be allowed, without any restrictions, to invade Russia. Yes, invade Russia. And creating and securing a large demilitarized area within Russia, at the very least between 30 to 40 kilometers. So Ukraine is out of the artillery range in Russian territory. enough with this escalation narrative, right? How much more can, we be fearful of this escalation that Russia is going to retaliate? They've already done enough to prove to us that they're terrorists and they're not going to back down. Russia cannot, they don't get to feel safe anymore. They can't. Since 2014, they get to sit comfortably in their country and pound the Ukrainians from Russia, right? And nobody does anything to them. The Ukrainian forces are always being told, don't do anything, right? Because you're going to escalate the situation, right? You don't want to hit Russia. And this has resorted to the Ukrainian forces always pretending that they're not sending drones out in Russia, pretending that they don't know what's going on, right? Having to indirectly fund, Russian legions to do border raids, which is great, but it's not going to change anything. So I think Ukraine needs to be directly involved in invasion of Russia. And this invasion is not to plunder and destroy Russia. It is to secure Russia, right? Secure a DMZ to make sure that Russia cannot do this again, ever again. And this is going to force the Russian army to also back down, right? They're going to realize, holy crap, the Ukrainian forces are invading Russia, right? And now they're going to face a dilemma. And it's far better to face a dilemma than a problem, because a problem can be solved, but the dilemma puts the enemy in the position where they're going to have to do compromise. So do they continue try to defend Zaporizhia, or do they have to go and retreat to Russia and start, actually fighting the Ukrainian forces within Russia? And you can imagine the amount of blowback this is going to have in Russian society. It's going to quickly turn from a special military operation to a special defensive operation in Russia. So this is my 2 cents. Again, this is my personal opinion. I put my faith within the Ukrainian armed forces, the generals, the commanders, the President Zelensky, and every officer and people in high, leadership positions within the army to do the right thing. But I think that this would be just, because far too long Russia's been feeling safe and hasn't faced the consequences. And I think this is one of the consequences they need to face if they go ahead with this. That's the video for today, guys. Please let me know what you think about my comments. Again, the whole goal here is not to plunder or destroy Russia. It is to secure Russia and make sure that there is a safe transition, so Russia cannot do this again and continue committing terrorist attacks. So that's the video for today. Please leave me a comment, subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my videos, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you and take care.